All right, I don't have a funny good transition, so I'm just gonna jump into the story on the Rico, and I'm gonna put this in quotes, stomp, and you'll see why as I go through the story. Let's kick things off by talking about the Texas Derby. And the Texas Derby is one of the best derbies in MLS. It's up there with the likes of El Tráfico, the California Clasico, and the Hudson River Derby. The rivalry began in 2006 when the San Jose Earthquakes moved to Houston to become the Dynamo and add a local rival for FC Dallas. If you needed a sign that this would be a good rivalry, look no further than the first ever meeting, where Houston would win a thriller 4-3 over Dallas. While the rivalry was still young, and there were many more exciting moments to come in the future, as early as September 30th, 2007, a new record was added to the Texas Derby books. While Ricardo Clark may not be the first name neutrals think of when thinking about the Houston Dynamo, Dynamo fans will always remember Clark fondly. Clark began his career with the Metro Stars and was eventually traded to the San Jose Earthquakes, which is how he eventually ended up with the Houston Dynamo as part of the relocation. His first stint with the Dynamo was phenomenal, and actually where this event takes place. As we've covered in previous history episodes, the Dynamo would go on to win MLS Cup in their first season in Houston, that being 2006. Looking to be one of the few teams ever to win back-to-back MLS Cups, Houston brought back a strong team, including Ricardo Clark. Let's jump right to match day 26. Houston travels to Toyota Stadium to take on FC Dallas. As of this match day, Houston is 2 points behind Chivas USA for the top of the West, while Dallas is 5 points behind Houston. As there were still 3 games to be played, this game meant a lot for both sides, looking to still fight for the top of the West. Tons of legendary MLS names gracing the field this game, like a young Drew Moore and Dax McCarty for Dallas, offset by legends like Pat Onstad and Brian Ching for Houston. The game was quiet and contentious for almost all of the first half, but just when it looked like there would be no scoring, MLS legend Dwayne De Rosario popped up to make it 1-0 for Houston in the 45th plus one. A gut punch right before the half for Dallas and a huge confidence boost for the Dynamo. Houston would ride the confidence by adding yet another 2 goals. Eddie Robinson in the 62nd and Stu Holden in the 84th. While the game was seemingly wrapped up at this point, the action was far from over. And around the 89th minute, it all kicked off. In Daryl's article, he does a really good job of describing the kind of player Carlos Ruiz was on the field. Many of us fans know him as a legendary MLS striker, but there was a part of his game that many fans likely missed, myself included. Daryl notes that anyone who has played against Carlos Ruiz knows the feeling. The kicks, the pokes, the elbows. A skilled striker, but a world-class pest. To further substantiate this claim, a few quotes in Darrow's article, including one from Eddie Robinson and another from Brian Ching, talked about how many players around the league likely were a bit happy to have seen this incident happen. It's much easier from a fan perspective to see now how this all unraveled. So let's finally jump back to what exactly did happen. A free kick for Dallas is taken not far from the Houston Dynamo penalty area. The ball was lofted into the area of Ruiz and Clark, who were both battling for the ball. Ruiz goes through the back of Clark and knocks him over, himself falling over in the process as well. Clark was quoted in Darrow's articles as saying he thought Ruiz had kneed him in the back, and that was the final straw that set him off. Without a single hesitation, Clark stood up, went over to Ruiz, who was still on the ground, and full force kicked him in the shoulder. If you go and watch the video, you can audibly hear the kick. It is very loud. There was a lot of force behind that.
Somos otra vez.
Servicio de McCarthy, 1-2, no pudieron contactar con la...
Immediately, there's pushing and shoving with teammates coming over to separate players and try to dissolve the situation. Even after the kick, Clark is still heated and yelling as he is getting pushed away from the scrap. Unsurprisingly, many Dallas players were coming after Clark, while players on both sides were trying to separate them and cool everyone down. Clark obviously received a straight red for the incident, but interestingly enough, the already on a yellow Carlos Ruiz was also sent off for the original foul on Clark. The game would remain a 3-0 Houston win from there. Plenty of aftermath to cover in this incident as well. Clark would go on to receive the longest suspension in MLS history at the time, that being 9 games. And fun fact, one of the 3 players with the previous record suspension, that being 6 games, was the Dallas keeper in this game, Dario Sala. The suspension meant that Clark would miss out on the final games of the regular season as well as all of the playoffs. Certainly a big blow for the Dynamo as they look to repeat as Cup champions. Luckily for Houston, they had a super strong team, and despite Clark's suspension, were able to win the 2007 MLS Cup, meaning they had completed the back-to-back. Clark's suspension was so long that it actually continued 2 games into the 2008 season. As soon as the suspension was over, Clark rejoined the team without missing a beat. Clark would finish his Dynamo career playing over 250 times for the side and engraving his name in Dynamo history. A happy end to Clark's story, but how did things end up between Ruiz and Clark? According to Darrow's article, in 2013, the pair had sat down, talked it out, and swapped jerseys. Following the reconciliation, Ruiz was quoted as saying, "Everything is in the past. We have a lot of respect for each other, so we changed jerseys and everything is good." A happy ending to the story that helped kickstart a fierce Texas derby.
So I can't help but notice I'm not picking up any of your story where you mentioned he started out Ricardo Clark as a Red Bull. And
I did.
about his
I
time.
said Metro Stars.
Yeah, but like you just kind of like glanced over it. Like you could have gone at least 3 or 4 pages of notes into his time there because you know what this is all about. No, in all seriousness, I think it's a very interesting conversation and one that was brought up with Luis Suarez joining the league. Does the league need more villains? I've seen that kind of mentioned because I love that article. I've watched it a couple times, that video. The word villain has been used a lot, and it's not to say he's a bad person, but it's just his play style, right? He's very antagonistic. He's very much I'm going to get under your skin and that was something that Luis Suarez was described as coming in here. Do we need more of that? And that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, very very interesting. And again, like you mentioned, somebody where we recognize him just from numbers alone as a clinical playoff goal scorer and somebody whose name constantly escapes me on trivia. But he has this other side of him. And again, being in Texas, right? The Texas Derby itself is insane playing out of that. I wonder what would happen if that happened today. Right? 9 games feels like it should be a little bit more than that after what I think one of the most funny things too is in that video how crisp and clear every word in that audio is. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't
could hear someone yelling Rico, Rico, Rico before he kicked them.
That was the coach. So that was head coach.
The audio is really crisp.
Yeah, I believe that was head coach Wade Barrett, if I remember that correctly.
Barrett was the coach. I don't know if he was the quote, but Barrett was in charge at the time. Oh wait, no, I think Barrett was on the field actually.
Oh yeah, current interim head coach at the time,
yeah.
and
he was. I think he was the captain at that time.
Yes, he was captain and current. At the time of writing the article, was current head coach. That's I remember reading that. But yeah, Wade saw it coming and yelled something, and I just remember hitting Ruiz and just pandemonium after that. But again, like everybody knew what he was about, right? They even mentioned it. Like they first met up in
when he was New York, New Jersey. Stars.
Yeah,
yeah,
like so sick, right? Like yeah, that's the stuff. Like if that, I feel like if that happens in like another league, I feel like people just talk about it all the time. Like, oh my god, do you remember when this happened and this broke? Like, I don't know. I'm not going to get down that path, but
I have to say, I wanted to comment on the villains thing because the league having villains is fantastic. And I feel like the league has not marketed that very well. But like, look at the other big American sports leagues. Like Tom Brady was a perfect villain for the NFL. Like he was just like, he was such an easy person to pick as a villain for that league. And people loved to like watch Patriot games, even if they didn't have their team involved, because they wanted to see him lose. But it got more engagement, got people involved, it got people more committed. They were watching games that didn't involve their teams because there was a good villain to watch, you know?
I'll tell you that's
I'm on board with it.
That's Josh Allen for me right now.
Well, that's just because you're a Jets fan.
Well, being a Jet fan in upstate New York, right, where Buffalo is modern, I watch it just to see him lose. Like it's great. And I agree. And by the way, I didn't want to get into the conversation too much, but I completely agree with you. I think it's good to have them so long as they're not causing too much of an issue. Like if Suarez goes around and starts biting people again, like, okay, time to go. Like there's a level of villainy that I'm okay with. But yeah, just being good and being annoying and being a pest. Awesome. Hook it in my veins. I love it.
You know who would have been great at that had he stuck around and continued to be successful? David Ochoa would have been so good. So
It's
good.
tough to do that as a goalkeeper though, because I used to do that too. Like on corner kicks, I'd be just like I don't know if you ever smelled my goalkeeper gloves, like when we would play on like
Do they
pickups.
smelled your goalkeeper gloves?
They're that bad where you can smell them from far away if they're bad enough.
I don't want to smell your
Well,
goalkeeper
that's my
gloves.
point. But what I was getting to is what I would used to do is I'd have people stand in front of the goalkeeper, right? So I take my gloves and they reek. I just rub them on their face,
Oh my
and
gosh.
they get the smell stuck on them. And then they teach you things too, like like step on their toes, right? Or poke them in the back, or do little things like that. And I had a kid turn around and smack me once, and he got sent off. I was like, hell yeah, I did it. Good job, go me, right?
Oh me.
But yeah, so great story, two great stories, right? One that absolutely stands out to most people, apparently not you, but most people who know this league, right? That game is forever in our memories. And then there's one who the diehards know but needs to be brought out to light more. So well done, good job.